has found the most of the skips that we use in the run.
So I think we're getting ready to start very, very soon.
Exhibiting.
Start button. And this should get exciting. This is, by the way, we are using a Swiss-type tournament for this tournament, and Frayzlo against RisingMooon is the closest seeded game. So we should have one hell of a race for you tonight. And we're off, actually, now.
And oh my gosh, thank the stars, both players are V. I mean, they got some silly outfits on, but at least they're both playing the main character. Moon showing off their adorable bunny pet. And yeah, so here we go. We are off. In this part of the game, we just kind of learn about this game's very unique movement. Even without the double jump or the slide, this game has a very interesting property to its jumps, which is that you can drop off of a platform without jumping and then still be able to jump after, you know, before landing on the ground again, as we see for them to get across some of these gaps. So even without any special stuff, it's very interesting.
Yes, and that property is going to be used by both players extensively, especially Frayzlo, because he found most of these, to damage boost. Every time you get hit, you get bumped up a little bit, about 1/3 the height of V, and with that boost, you can then jump at the top of it a little bit when you do a bump jump in the first Metroid, if you're familiar with that game. And that allows you to gain more height than the game expects you to be able to have at this point in the game. And we're coming straight to the first damage boost in the game. And RisingMooon makes it perfectly.
Nails it.
And Frayzlo as well. So this is a demonstration. There's going to be...
oh, no!
After. But there's going to be bigger damage boosts later in the game. It's one that skips about half a level and another one that skips an entire boss. So we're going to tell you when it happens, because those two are fairly precise and really hype.
So that's one of those moments where I'm not glad that RisingMooon missed that or fell there because I wish ill upon them, but I am glad that we got to actually see the part of the level that gets skipped. As you can see, that damage boost really only saves, you know, 10-ish seconds.
It's just a 5, yeah.
Yeah,
it's a small one.
It's a pretty tiny little bit to skip, but it's pretty easy to pull off. They both, you know, pulled it off, and it's good to do. Yeah, it's a time save. You got to do it.
Yep. And it's not very dangerous, because if you miss it, usually you're not going to fall, so you can just wait for the conving to hit you again. So no risk and good reward. It's worth doing it.
Yeah. All right, so now they're making their way to... Well, actually, this is the last portal. We didn't really talk about the portals. So these portals spawn enemies, and every time that you kill an enemy, the portal loses health. Now, as you saw, Frayzlo waited for the portal to spawn a couple enemies, and RisingMooon is going to do it too. Wait for the first two, and then leave and come back. What that does is it gets the portal to spawn the first wave twice, which basically just means that you get twice the enemies on the first one, which allows you to do more damage to the portal and get through it just a little bit faster.
Yeah, Frayzlo had a pretty good one there. Good spawns on the enemies, because the fire guys, real name Charers, but we never call them because can spawn anywhere, and they can get really, really, really trolly.
Yeah, one thing you'll notice the players do a lot, and this is just an interesting property of the game's different weapons, is they'll switch to the default weapon to fight Chars, which, by the way, they have 3 names. They're fire guys, they're called Charers. In the game's files, they are apparently called materializers. So,
oh, really? I didn't even know that. That's interesting.
So they have 4 HP, and the main weapon does a quick burst of 4 damage, which means that given the little bit of extra range that you get out of the main weapon, players will very often switch to that weapon just to take out a materializer very quickly and easily.
Now we both missed a little bit the fight against Miyugi. It was the first boss. It's more a demonstration of boss mechanics in this game. She's really not a danger to the player. Basically, our gimmick was simply that you can hit her only between her attacks, and both got through her very, very quickly and are making their way to the second part of the floating keep.
Yep. So on that Miyagi boss, they used one of the game's weapons called Sloth, which hits very, very slowly, but it does 8 damage when it hits. And since you can only hit the boss once per phase, logically, you want to use the one that hits the hardest with 1 attack, which is Sloth. And it ends up getting through the fight twice as fast as the default weapon would.
Yeah. The main weapon you're going to see in this race is Greed. It's kind of a circle around the player that hits extremely quickly, but is dangerous to use because you have to stay very close to the enemy. However, since it's the best DPS in the game, you're going to see players use it a lot.
Yeah, it's really good DPS, and the fact that you don't have to aim it means that a lot of the time you can be moving your character around freely while you're attacking. And, you know, in a speed run, being able to kind of move toward your goal while hitting something that's behind you comes into play quite frequently.
And now we're coming into Pergora, the first real boss of the game, and we're going to see a lot of different weapons used to deal optimal damage for different attacks. Frayzlo gets the wind attack, which is the second best attack you can get to kill him quickly. And he's having a little bit of struggle keeping the damage on with Lost, another weapon that deals 2 damage, but with long range.
And we'll see how... RisingMooon also gets the wind attack right away. And looks like they're doing a little bit better of a job keeping the pressure on Pergora. Yeah. They are actually tied up on health.
Fell.
This boss, you'll also see a lot of tanking strats used. It looks really... Oh, Moon, they both actually ended up getting the kill almost at the same time.
That's really, really close race.
So that boss always looks like it was a really close call, but really it's just because it's the only boss in the game that you can basically just tank and out-damage if you know what you're doing. The rest of the game's bosses, you're not gonna have much luck with that.
And now we're going to do the skip that's called the falling skip. Basically, there is a trigger that starts a little cutscene where you slowly fall with some flying mechanic. But you can jump over it by loading another save file, gaining the double jump in that save file, rejoining your main save file, and then immediately jump on the first frame that you come back in your save file. And they both got the quote-unquote bad version of the skip. They both got it on the first time. There is one version where you can keep Ruby on your back and fly up and get through this section extremely quickly. Another one where you just have normal mechanics. Both got the second one. It's about 10 seconds slower. It's not too bad.
Right, so there's a few parts in the game where you can change save files and come back and keep some of the properties that were in your other file. Which is part of the reason that this is a New Game Plus category, but that is actually the only one that saves RTA, and so it's really the only one that's allowed in the timing of this game.
Yes, and now we're getting into a little section that we call, well, it's a misnomer, but we call it the Electram skip. Basically, you're going to see both players not take a save during this entire fairly difficult section, get to the boss, defeat the boss, and then reset.
Oh!
And, Frayzlo took balls to the face, and he's going to have to reset, whereas Moon gets to Electram without taking any damage, and he's going to take on Electram.
Yeah, so that's pretty rough. And the reason for skipping the checkpoints is to save a bunch of backtracking. Did Frayzlo take the checkpoint this time, or is he's probably still going for the skip, I imagine?
Yeah, he's still going for the skip.
That's not going to happen
time,
twice.
Yeah, he gets there without taking any damage. Well done.
So Electram gives kind of a new mechanic. We've already seen the mechanic with Pergora, where when he gets to 40% health, he enrages, and his attacks become more fearsome. However, Electram does a new thing, where when he enrages, he becomes invulnerable, and begins a long string of attacks that you need to dodge while you can't deal damage to him.
Frayzlo here with 60 HP, and Moon takes an electric ball to the face. Sadly, he's going to have to return to the previous save, about 40 seconds away from the boss, and then make his way again. That is the danger with this skip, is that if you die to Electram, you're going to lose a lot of time. It's a very painful time loss.
Yeah, it's one of the things where in a race you have to you have to think a lot about which of these really risky strats are you going to still go for. Moon this time opts to take the check